We do have a interesting game here tonight. I just went live on YouTube too, so if you prefer to watch over there, that should be up and running now. Let's get over to. I'll share my screen here and get over to the Fantasy Labs Optimizer. Yeah, kind of an ugly game. 37-point total. Steelers are 3-point favorites at home. We got Will Levis in his second start with the Titans. I kind of wanted to start there just because he obviously had a really good game last week, especially in the game log. I do think he ran really, really hot on touchdowns. Obviously, throwing 4 touchdowns on 19 attempts is not sustainable. We don't expect that to continue, or at least I don't. Just overall had a really, really efficient day on the road in Atlanta, at home versus Atlanta. Now on the road on a short week versus Pittsburgh. It should be a much tougher spot, or at least it looks that way on paper. So, I think you can pretty much throw this first week out the window. The one thing I will say is the 7 rushing attempts. I believe a couple of those were at the end where, taking a kneel. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but anyway, either way, he had a good amount of rushing attempts, which is intriguing. Didn't do very much with them, but that is intriguing to get 7 rushing attempts in the first game. But I expect some regression here. I'd be shocked if he was to put up 4 touchdowns in a game environment like this, but anything is possible. Obviously, a lot of that production came through DeAndre Hopkins, who 3 of his 4 receptions went for touchdowns, and 128 yards on 6 targets, 4 receptions is again obviously something I'd expect to regress here. Hopkins already did have a 8 reception, 140-yard game on his resume, so it's not impossible to repeat. Obviously, the touchdowns are really tough to repeat, but obviously Hopkins, we know dating back to his entire time in the league, he has multiple touchdown upside, has a 100-yard upside, so it's just a much tougher spot is basically what I'm trying to get at. Versus Atlanta at home versus Pittsburgh on the road on a short week. And we'll round out the Tennessee offense here with Derrick Henry, who did have actually has had a couple nice games in a row, and really 3 out of the last 4. And honestly, yeah, you could go back to week 2 versus the Chargers. He's actually been decent throughout the entire year, especially last week. 22 attempts, 101 yards, added 4 receptions too, as you can see here. Didn't get in the end zone. And still got 19.2 DraftKings points, which is really nice. You'd take that all day. And that makes 2 weeks in a row with him over 19 DraftKings points. He's been involved in the pass game, at least relative to where he was last year. It's been about the same. You can expect at least a couple targets generally, and maybe 4 is probably his ceiling there as far as targets go. But I don't think he's going to get played much, honestly, at this 11.6 price tag. There's not a whole lot of savings. There is a little bit. Connor Hayward and Allen Robinson, we'll get into them, and Treylon Burks and Chig Okonkwo. Those guys are going to provide some salary relief. We'll get to them in a little bit, but we'll move over to Pittsburgh's offense. I'll just run through these guys quickly, and then I definitely want to get some opinions from some of our live stream members. Kenny Pickett I don't believe he's on the injury report coming into the game. I know he left the game early last week. So obviously, take this last game log with a grain of salt. He hasn't been great this year from a fantasy perspective. Hasn't eclipsed 20 fantasy points yet. Now, the good news is he's only 9,200, so you don't really need 20 points from him. That would be great if he got there. But honestly, he feels more like a floor play than a ceiling play to me. So I prefer to put him at flex rather than captain. He's also one of those guys that if he does well, it's likely through one of his receivers or a couple of receivers, Pickens, Johnson, So, if I was going to go with the captain in this range, I think I'd prefer to go with Pickens and Johnson and then put Pickett in the flex, if that makes sense. And I like both of these guys. Deontay Johnson obviously has been really good, just like a great target earner throughout his entire career, and has shown that the last 2 weeks too, coming right back in to 6 targets and then 14 targets last week against Jacksonville. Now, they were trailing the majority of that game, so the game script really worked out well for him. But you can see that his snaps got up from the first week that he came back, only 39 of the 59 offensive snaps. Turned that into 6 targets. And then when he got close to the full allotment of offensive snaps, 14 targets on 61 snaps. So obviously, Deontay Johnson is someone you feel really comfortable about getting, at least 5, 6, 7 targets, and a guy that has double-digit catch upside. We've seen it before, especially if they get down early and they're trailing a bit. We can absolutely see Deontay Johnson, get 7, 8, 9 catches here. That wouldn't shock anyone, I don't think. George Pickens, more of a touchdown threat, obviously, than Deontay Johnson. And last week's game, he did have the only 1 catch, but turned it into a touchdown. 5 targets, and you'll see that happen. It'll be like the seesaw effect, I like to call it. Deontay Johnson got 14 targets. That means there's not a whole lot else to go around. So George Pickens, only ends up with 5. But the week prior, when Johnson, didn't play as much and had 6 targets, you could see Pickens out-targeted him. Obviously played on more snaps too with the 8 targets. So, I think one of these guys is going to have a good game. Which one that is, I don't really have a strong preference. I will say I do think Deontay Johnson is going to come with a lot more ownership. Obviously, he's got a better projection, slightly better ceiling projection, and I think people see that 14 target game. I mean, I do too. They see that 14 target game and they think, man, I want some of that. So I can't really blame people for that. And then, I'll just cover the running backs really quick, and then we'll get these guys involved. Najee Harris, largely been disappointing on the season. Hasn't been extremely efficient. That's kind of been his MO throughout his career. He's more of like a volume type of player. I think he would benefit if the game stayed close or Steelers are playing with a lead, because it's pretty clear that Jaylen Warren is the guy that they prefer to use in the passing game and or the 2-minute drill. So, I think Najee can get there. I mean, he's 7,200. If he gets in the end zone, that's going to be a lot of the legwork right there. And I don't think he's going to get played much because he's kind of in between Deontay Johnson and Jaylen Warren, who I think people are going to prefer to play. Maybe not so much Jaylen Warren. You can see the projection ownership a little bit less, but I do think just the pricing is going to make it tougher for people to get to Najee right there. You can see here is Jaylen Warren's game logs, and obviously it used a lot more in the passing game here, and he's a solid bet for 3, 4, 5 targets too. It has gotten up to 6 3 times, and obviously on a PPR format like DraftKings, that's pretty valuable. I don't have a strong preference between the two of these guys. I think it's more just depends on how you're building the lineups. If you think Pittsburgh plays with the lead or at least keeps it competitive, I think Najee is a better bet to score a touchdown, and the sportsbook odds would agree with me there. And then Jaylen Warren, if you think Tennessee plays with the lead or maybe Pittsburgh gets down early, has to run more pass plays, whatever the case is, Jaylen Warren would obviously be the preference then for me. All right, let's get some of these guys in here. I know we have Blake around. Blake, do you have a favorite captain for tonight?
For me, it's either Deontay Johnson or Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I think that Henry call is really interesting. I like I said earlier, I don't think he's going to get played much at the 11.6 price tag. I think Deontay Johnson is likely going to be the highest owned captain. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Let me check this out. You know what? Actually, Henry and Hopkins, I have another aggregated one on this Fantasy Labs. The aggregated projected ownership gets a little bit funky. But yeah, it looks like Henry, Hopkins, and then Deontay will all be roughly 12 to 15%, and those will be the three highest owned, for good reason too, obviously. But yeah, I like. It's just hard not to like Deontay Johnson at his price, and the possibility for double digit targets. So I like both of those calls, Blake. Josh, are you around? Do you have your mic on?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. What's up, Josh? First time Josh has jumped on stream with us, and he is our resident Steelers fan. So I'm glad to get him on for this one. Josh, feel free to give us any Steelers takes or any Titans takes you have for tonight's game.
So I don't know if balls deep is in the chat, but it might be kicker season tonight.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Do you have a preference between the two?
I, all I know is the Steelers defense gives the Steelers offense great field position, and then we can never do anything with it. So I'm inclined to think Boswell, but the Steelers defense doesn't really break in the red zone either, so could be either one.
Yeah, absolutely. I had mentioned this in the NFL Fantasy channel right before I came on, but I feel like Vrabel, and this is totally anecdotal. I don't have any data to back this up, but I feel like Vrabel loves to kick field goals. I know that Nick Folk has, I think he has a game with 5 field goals, or am I tripping? I might be tripping on that. Oh yeah, no,
I think so.
first game of the season, yeah, against the Saints, he did have 5 field goals. And then you can see these other games too. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games with 10 plus fantasy points of the 7, which is kind of unheard of for kickers. So yeah, I think my slight preference would be to Nick Folk. But Boswell can get there too, and we know Boswell has a leg on him. Has a 15-point game and a 12-point game on his resume, another 11-point game, and he's he's up there. He'll definitely get some chances. So yeah, I like Josh's call of the kickers. I've normally been hesitant when they're flirting with these 5K price tags, but in a game like tonight where a couple field goals from the kicker could be enough. I think that that's a really interesting call by you, Josh. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we jump over to Doc?
The only other thing I was kind of thinking of today is the Steelers have a really hard time kind of getting going in games. I think they could easily be down 1-2 touchdowns by the end of the first quarter. So I really like Jaylen Warren tonight. I think they're going to have a hard time putting Najee into the game plan. Just not enough yards, like you said. So
For sure. Yeah, and I totally agree. If you think, Tennessee can jump out to a lead or Pittsburgh's playing from behind, then I would go Jaylen Warren over Najee. And obviously you save $800 there, which can go kind of a long way on this slate where there's not a whole lot of savings. There is a couple options down here. Doc, I'd love to get your overall thoughts on the slate, and then maybe a cheap player or two that you're looking at.
Yeah, super interesting slate, honestly. I'm having trouble rationalizing my way through it. What it all goes back to for me is Hopkins is just way too expensive, mostly based on his performance last week. And there's obviously still question marks with Levis. Questionable target share. It's not like he got peppered. He was just insanely efficient. So I'm trying to get away from him. And if I'm going to get away from him, I got to pick some receivers to catch the ball. So I love Chigo Konkwu, a receiver, tight end. I'm going to have a lot of him. And obviously, we haven't seen it yet, but at some point, Burke's role is going to expand in this offense. You would have to expect. So he's super cheap. Why not tonight? Is kind of the mentality that I'm taking. And I love the Steelers receivers on the other side, especially as captain options too. All the way down to Connor Hayward. I think he might end up being my most exposed captain tonight. I don't love it, but everything just seems to fall into place, and it seems like a super unique play that if he scores a touchdown, 3 or 4 catches could be super useful. And I'm not convinced at what you said earlier that Deontay Johnson is going to have higher ownership at the captain spot than Pickens. Pickens is a flashier play that the public tends to love. And with the fact that Deontay Johnson hasn't had a touchdown since he played college ball, like I don't know, it's a harder click than the flashy touchdown making receiver in Pickens. So I think those two ownerships are going to be super close, and that's kind of the assumption that I'm working from right now.
Yeah. Great overall view of the slate. I hope you're right, honestly, because I would love Deontay to come in with lower or even the same amount of ownership as Pickens, because I think Deontay is the much better play. Obviously Pickens has bigger one play upside, but man, Deontay Johnson in the PPR format, probably the only guy in this game that has 10 catch upside or even 10 target upside. So I hope you're right there, Doc. I would be very happy to be wrong if Deontay does end up coming lower than Pickens. But agreed there that I like both of them. And I'm glad you brought up both tight ends too. Should mention too, I don't think I mentioned that Pat Freiermuth is out for this game, which is why Connor Haywood is showing up with a better projection than if Freiermuth was in. And you can see last week, 6 targets without Freiermuth, did get a red zone target as well on 49 of the 67 offensive snaps. And yeah, at that price, if he gets 3-4 catches and falls in the end zone, you're very well probably looking at the optimal captain, and he will allow you to pay up for a Henry and get Kenny Pickett and probably one of those receivers as well if that's the route you want to go. But yeah, that opens up a ton of salary there. And I like the Treylon Burks call too. Treylon Burks, has a lot of talent and has dealt with some injuries in his career, and also just like subpar quarterback play. And not to say that Will Levis is a major upgrade over Ryan Tannehill. In fact, at this point in their careers, you could make the opposite case. But yeah, I agree with Doc. At some point, you would expect Treylon Burks to kind of show his talent, to kind of show through. Or at least, I like taking those types of chances on a showdown slate where you're not betting on more than one game. And in one game, anything can happen. Small sample sizes, random things can happen. Treylon Burks could be the one that goes for 3 touchdowns this week on 4 catches. You know what I mean? So I like that call a lot too. Let's get McBobo in here for our final to kind of close it out. And I do see that our friend BD Balls Deep jumped in too. So McBobo, I'd love to get your thoughts on the slate overall. And if you have a particular captain that you're liking above the rest, feel free to share that as well.
Definitely hit on some of the points that I was going to make there. Jaylen Warren, the pass catching, and I just want to say to our friend, the resident Steelers fan, when I heard just the sound of how he spoke of how they get the good field position, but the offense does nothing with it. That is a true fan. The tone of his voice was the tone of a true fan. I just want to know that. But for captain, I am the fish that we just talked about it. I like Pickens, a Georgia guy. Always love Georgia guys. I think the chemistry him and Pickett has, he's going to rely on that tonight, and I think they're going to get some big hookups. So, that Jig Okonwo's will be getting some good targets tonight. So, I don't think there's really anything that I can add to it. So, that's pretty much what I got there.
Absolutely.
Also, no sound effects. I can't find it on the new setup. Discord has changed once more. It's evolved.
Damn it, Discord. Always changing up on us. But we appreciate it either way, McBubba. And McBubba, we'll have to go reverse alphabetical order next time so we can have you on first, because I feel like the last couple weeks we get to you and we've pretty much covered everything. So sorry about that.
It's okay, because I hear things that I was thinking about. It's like, okay, I like Jaylen Warren in the passing. I like Okonwo targets. That's fine. That's confident for me, and I think for other people listening, to hear that, okay, there's other people with the same thought process, looking at the same information and coming to the same conclusion. So that is not a problem at all.
Okay.
I love to hear everyone's thoughts.
Awesome. McBoba is always a good sport, so we appreciate that. I did have a couple questions here in chat. Or one question from our friend Max. He asked about Westbrook Akine. I think I'm saying that right. Apologies if I'm not. Yeah, not someone I'm heavily targeting, Max, if I can be totally honest. I think if you're playing MME or if you are making several lineups, he's someone I would be totally fine including. I'm going to make 20 lineups tonight, and I'll probably have 1 or 2 lineups with him. But yeah, not someone I'm super excited to play. He did get the touchdown last week. I think with him being priced so closely to Burks and them having somewhat similar ownership projections, that's kind of going to be my preference there. Now, I will say if the rest of your lineup is looking, very, very chalky or very popular and you want, a differentiator, going from Burks or Chig down to Westbrook Akine or even Hayward to Westbrook Akine, not the worst move. You're not giving up that much projection, a few points in projection, and you save yourself some ownership too. So, yeah, I'll be honest, not someone I'm super excited to play, but I probably will have a little bit of exposure across my 20 lineups. So, let's get BD in here. He said he does have his mic on and he can close us out here before we get to some trivia. Obviously we want to get for anyone just tuning in to the chat or the stream for the first time, BD is our resident kickers expert. And our friend Josh already said that he likes the kickers tonight. So BD, I'd love to hear who you like better between the kickers, and also feel free to give us your overall thoughts on the slate.
Nick Folk hasn't missed a kick this year, so I think I do have like 60% of them in my lines, and never had that many kickers before. Feels pretty gross. Besides everything else, I wasn't really listening to you guys. I know Deontay Johnson was already mentioned, but the fact that he got 11 targets out of Pickett's 16 in the first half of the last game is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the game before that, he was a target hog as well. I think Pickens takes a backseat to him for sure, if I had to guess. And then I think the D-Hop stuff is going to get overblown because there was 3 broken plays out of his 5 targets that made him look a lot better than he was, and Levis a lot better than he was.
Yeah, totally agree with everything you said. And I agree with you on the kickers too. I said too, Vrabel's never seen a field goal that he didn't like. So I like Folk a little bit better than Boswell, but I do think this is a slate where, the kickers could push through here with 2 or 3 attempts and then and that kind of be what you need there. And I agree with your Hopkins call. Yeah, basically he had 4 receptions and 3 of them went for touchdowns. So you'd expect that to regress along with Will Levis as well. So thanks for jumping in, BD. We appreciate it. With that being said, let's get to some trivia. For those just tuning in for the first time, how we do this is let me share my screen to Discord here. Whoops. Give me 1 second. Where is Discord? Here we go. All right. First person to respond with the correct answer in the NFL Fantasy Channel, I give $5 to. We have 2 questions tonight, so I'll be giving out $10 in total. And always get some good meme action in there too. And we'll go ahead and we'll start with this first one is from our friend DGen, and I know it, Josh. He, like I said, is a Steelers fan, so he wanted to throw up the Steelers question, trivia question. It's a good one because I do enjoy when Josh will send me some, or our friend Fantasy Sports King. I don't think he's around tonight, but he'll send me some too. And I always think they're good when I don't know the answer, and this is one I didn't know. So here we go. First question. What Steelers player had a fan base called the Italian Army? What Steelers player had a fan base called the Italian Army? McBobo, very quickly. Very nice. McBobo with Franco Harris. Awesome. I'll unmute
My
Josh.
dad grew up with that era of football, so he tells me all about those guys.
Oh, gotcha. There you go. There you go. Very nice. Yeah, thank you, Josh, for providing that for us. And yeah, throw some fire emojis on McBobo's Franco Harris answer. Nate was right there. McWans was right there. So you guys, very nice, very nice. And thanks again to Josh for that question. I do have one more, and I came up with this one, so everyone's fair game. Josh, you're welcome to get in on this too. All right, here we go. Last question. Which Titans quarterback was named to the Pro Bowl despite throwing more interceptions than touchdowns in that season? Which Titans quarterback was named to the Pro Bowl despite throwing more interceptions than touchdowns in that season? Got a couple good guesses so far. I see Kerry Collins and Marcus Mariota, Steve McNair, Warren Moon. Nope. It is a guy. It is a guy you guys will know. Paul Steve says Aaron Rodgers next year. I think you mean this year, BD. He's coming back this year. Levis. No, I don't see it, man. And you guys named probably the first four guys that would come to mind when you think of Titans quarterbacks. Is there another one? Let me tell. McBobo asked for a hint. I'll say it was his rookie season, and it wasn't too long ago. It wasn't. It was within the last 20 years. Malik Willis. Oh man, I don't think I missed it. I just want to scroll back up, make sure I didn't miss it. Yeah, I didn't miss it. Mariota, no. Go. All right, I'll give a hint, and I think this is gonna give it away, but I gotta jump out and get some lineups in. He went to Texas. Gabbert, no. Moon, there it is. Afro Dizzle, Young, Vince Young. Vince Young, correct answer. I wrote down some. No one had that before, right? Before Afro? I don't think so. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how to say his name. Is it El Canal? El Canal? But anyways, he said, how do we not get that? I was surprised too. But sometimes it's tough. Yeah, Vince Young is correct. Throw some fire emojis on Afro Dizzle's answer. So I got $5 coming to McBobo and Afro. I think I have your info, McBobo. If I don't I do have it. Okay, perfect. Afro, send me your. You could DM me your Venmo or your Cash App, and I will get that to you right after the game. I do have to get the lineups in, so I'll send that to you guys sometime during the first corner. Okay, El Canal, yeah. Perfect. All right, sounds good. Perfect. Let's close it out on that. Thank you. Oh, you know what? I did just have some fun facts for those people. I'll share these really quick, just about that stat I shared. So yeah, Rookie of the Year, Vince Young, 13 interceptions, 12 passing touchdowns. That was in 2006. He did have 7 rushing touchdowns, so he had more total touchdowns than interceptions, but obviously more. He threw more interceptions than he did passing touchdowns. And I thought this was interesting. This would be a nice blast from the past here. Top 5 vote getters for Rookie of the Year in 2006. It went Vince Young, Marcus Colston, Maurice Jones-Drew, Marcus McNeil, who's a left tackle for the Chargers, and then Reggie Bush. Yep. All right, guys. Perfect. St. Reggie from McBobo. Yeah, thank you guys for jumping in. McBobo, Doc, Josh, Blake, and BD got in for a little bit too. I appreciate you guys jumping on Voice Channel with me tonight. And good luck, everyone. I hope someone takes something down. We'll see you guys later.